Hello, and Neiman Hao. Welcome back, and thanks for watching. As a part of documenting my journey, I had the idea that I could reflect and review different media that I've been consuming. So something that I enjoyed recently was an audiobook. It is a book by David Goggins, who is a former Navy SEAL, who shares his story of overcoming adversity and finding strength in authenticity. So, as a reflection upon this book that I had the opportunity to enjoy recently, I wanted to divide it into a 3-part video. So, in the first part of this video, we're going to be talking about the 40% rule. And you might be asking, well, I've never heard of the 40% rule, Lid. What is the 40% rule? So, the 40% rule is something that David Goggins, this former Navy SEAL, implemented in his life and allowed him to overcome learning disabilities, physical health limitations, and even his own fear and insecurities by recognizing that he could make decisions that would overcome his own thoughts. And he did that by implementing the 40% rule. So if you're interested in learning more about the 40% rule, how David Goggins implemented it in his life, and how I've chosen to apply it in my own life, then keep watching. Let's get into the video. Shall we shed some light on the subject? I think not. We're going to be satisfied with the lighting that is available in this very cozy hotel room. Thank you, Navy. So, today we're going to be talking about the 40% rule. The 40% rule is something that was popularized by David Goggins, who is the former Navy SEAL that I introduced in the earlier part of this video. So the 40% rule simply states that when we arrive at a point where our body and our mind is completely exhausted and we feel that we have nothing left remaining to offer, that we have only actually used 40% of our maximum potential, that there is a remaining 60% of reserves of energy that can be used to accomplish whatever task is at hand. So, how do we overcome this wiring in our brain that seems to be inherent to every human being? That we find ourselves seeking comfort, that we want to avoid pain and discomfort at any and all costs. And so in order to do that, our brain sets these invisible boundaries that keep us from becoming uncomfortable, from finding ourselves in a situation where we might not feel the most confident because we would rather seek something that would be comfortable to us. An example that David Goggins uses in his book that allowed me to kind of visualize this concept was the governor of a car. So I'm not sure if it's still a current feature, but in older model cars, a governor is a piece of equipment that limits the amount of fuel and air that runs through the system of the car in order to prevent the car from becoming overheated or from any kind of excessive wear or tear. But if you were to remove the governor of that car, in that moment you could discover the full potential of what that car is capable of. Like, you can go 0 to 100 real fast. But how do we make that change in our minds? Because our mind is not exactly the engine of a car, but there are certain things that we can do in order to propel ourselves past these invisible boundaries that we create within ourselves. So, a phrase that I heard recently that resonated with me was that we are all two different types of people. We are either overcomers or we are overcomed. And when you find yourself to be overcome with fear or anxiety, insecurity, pain, or exhaustion, what actions can you take to put yourselves beyond these fleeting emotions and find yourself in a place of confidence and really have access to the potential that is within each and every one of us? So something that I've been reflecting on is working to replace any limiting beliefs that you might have about yourself or your capabilities with a growth mindset. So it's something that I've happened upon a few times, but for those who are unfamiliar, we can be one of two types. We can either have a growth mindset or we can have a fixed mindset. A person with a fixed mindset might find themselves in a victim's mentality. So whenever an issue arises or they face failure in some aspect or another, they might limit themselves by making an excuse of some kind of ailment, or it might be some belief that they have applied to themselves that might not be true. And a way to do that is for you to pursue a growth mindset. So within a growth mindset, it doesn't matter what your background is, it doesn't matter the things that you've accomplished up until this point. Something else that really resonates with me is that your current circumstances don't dictate your future. It only dictates where you begin, because you can begin in this moment. You can begin to make those changes. So I actually came across some verses in the Bible that really address this issue and what these moments of contention really can allow us to experience in our lives. So the first verse that I came across was Job 23:10, which says, "But he knoweth the way that I take. When he hath tried me, I shall come forth as gold." So something to consider is the big picture, is not why is this happening to me, but why is this happening for me? What strengths will I have after I have come through this trial or this difficulty, whatever form it might take? So another verse that caught my attention that is very much relatable to this concept is Romans 4:1-5. And I'm just going to read 1-5. "Therefore, being justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, by whom also we have access by faith into this grace wherein we stand, and rejoice in hope of the glory of God. And not only, but we glory in tribulations also, knowing that tribulation worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope. And hope maketh not ashamed, because the love of God is shed abroad in our hearts by the Holy Ghost which is given unto us." So we're going to explore verse 3, which is very relatable to this concept of moving beyond your perceived limitations. So verse 3 says, "And not only, but we glory in tribulations also." So I would directly relate tribulations to any kind of difficulty that you might encounter on a daily basis, whether that be your own personal demons, whether that be some situation at work, whether it be some contention in a relationship with a friend or with a loved one. These can all be considered trials, tribulations, or just difficulties of life. So the verse continues in saying, "Knowing that tribulation worketh patience." So this patience allows us to understand the situation for what it is and to see it from a different perspective and to realize that there is a greater story that is being written, that this moment will pass away and that there is brighter days to come. It goes on to say experience. So these experiences, further elaborating on the good experiences and the bad experiences that we have. I know you've heard it said before that you can't have sunshine without a little rain. And I do believe, even as a person that very much enjoys the rain and am absolutely missing thunderstorms, I have been in California and Texas for far too long, and I severely miss a good old-fashioned Georgia thunderstorm. I digress. These experiences, something that I love and something that I repeat to myself quite often, is that even a bad day is a luxury. Now this is a common phrase. I'm not sure who I might be able to attribute it to, but even a bad day is a luxury. These experiences, these emotions that are involved are simply passing. but to be able to have those experiences in and of itself is a blessing. And the verse goes on that these experiences produce hope, because we are able to reflect on these experiences that we have overcome, these moments where we did feel that we had reached some invisible boundary of potential, and we moved beyond that. We powered through, and we came out on the other side. And in that moment, we have raised our barrier of resiliency. So we have found ourselves to be more flexible in those difficult situations. And the end result of all of that is hope. And hope in and of itself produces joy. Just realizing that there is an intended goal, that there is an intended purpose for all of the things that we encounter in life. And something that can be related to these verses and this discussion that we're having is a story about a man that encountered David Goggins during one of his ultramarathons, and just kind of demonstrates how David Goggins applied this 40% rule to his life. So for those who are not familiar, whenever David Goggins did start competing in ultramarathons, he wasn't very educated about different methods that people had, whether it be nutrition or whether it be the equipment that they might have utilized in order to produce better performance. He just knew that it was something that he wanted to do and that there was a purpose. So the encounter that we're discussing today is when Jesse Itzler ran into David Goggins whenever they were competing in Backwater, which is an ultramarathon that is held in Hawaii. And whenever he found him, David Goggins had broken some bones in his legs. He was severely dehydrated. He didn't have a camelback, so he had brought a folding chair and a couple bottles of water and some crackers that day. And Jesse Itzler, who is a famous entrepreneur, was there competing with a team to complete this ultramarathon. And he was just amazed by this huge guy that was out there competing. It just seemed like the odds were stacked against him. So the story goes on because Jesse Itzler actually hires David Goggins to come and stay with his family for a month. And during this time, he challenges Jesse Itzler to do some pull-ups. And if I remember correctly, he did between 4 and 8 pull-ups. So the story goes that after he completed these handful of pull-ups, that David Goggins looked at him and he said, "You're not leaving here until you do 100 pull-ups." And he was like, "No, friend. Yeah, that's not me." And he was like, "Oh, yes, friend, because you're only at 40%, and I believe that you still have 60% left in you." And that day, Jesse Itzler, over a period of time, completed 100 pull-ups by applying this 40% rule to his direct situation. And I think that's something that we all can draw strength from. So Romans 4 verse 5 is actually my life verse, and it is a verse that I draw inspiration and encouragement from on a daily basis. And I would like to emphasize that even if you aren't religious in any way, that there is something to be gained from this concept of moving beyond what you think yourself to be capable of. As a Christian, I know that whenever I encounter some difficulty, that on the other side of that difficulty is just a greater extent of the purification that is something that is part of the process or part of the journey of every believer's life. And for me, Romans 4 verse 5 is the culmination of all these concepts, that whenever we do come out on the other side, that the final product is hope. And that hope is something that this world is desperately seeking after, and it is something that we as Christians can share with other people. And I believe that even if you aren't religious, that joy, that hope, and that joy is something that we can share with those around us. And whenever we overcome our own difficulties, only then are we able to better help and better serve those around us. So, as an actionable item that we can pursue in relation to this concept is to place yourself in difficult situations. So I challenge you, whatever it might be for you, whether it be public speaking, maybe make a YouTube video. I do find that making YouTube videos is a great way to practice speaking. If it be learning a new language, maybe take that first step, whatever it might be. I know that for me, whenever I have been learning languages, that the best way to do that is to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation where you have to improvise and where you have to sort of create something out of what you might consider to be nothing. But remember, even when you think you've reached your maximum potential, there is a 60% reserve that is waiting to be used. So you find yourself to be in a difficult position, but you're like, why? Why am I pushing myself to be a better person? So I think our purpose is something that everybody seeks after, and some people might find that in religion, some people might find that in a specific cause. So a way for me to relate this back to the book by David Goggins is to speak about his purpose. So whenever he decided to start competing in ultra marathons, he decided that he was going to run for a cause, and he decided that he was going to run for a foundation that would provide scholarships to the kids of those who had served in special operations and had died serving their country. This was after he had suffered a traumatic experience in receiving news that several of his friends had died in a helicopter crash in 2009. So whether it be a societal cause or an environmental cause, or maybe your motivation is to provide for your family, or it may be simply to become the best version of yourself, then the best way to do that is to be uncomfortable. Something that I'd like to share is something that resonated with me recently, and it's a simple phrase. It's, you make a decision every day. You either evolve or you repeat. And if you're not in these uncomfortable situations, then you will never find yourself to be experiencing growth. So that is my challenge for you today. I hope that if you enjoyed this video, that you might consider reading or listening to David Goggins' audiobook, Can't Hurt Me. And I will be further discussing other concepts in this book that I feel resonated with me and have definitely made a difference in my mindset and the way that I approach different situations on a daily basis. If you enjoyed this video, if this video added value to your life in some way, or if you would like to see more videos like this, then please give me a thumbs up, consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you next time.